Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. And I can't stress enough, feedback is greatly important. So please feel free to fill up those comments in YouTube. It would be greatly appreciated. And also email, Substack, and X. Follow me on X and give commentary. All right, so this episode is focusing in on the television series, The Munsters. So I'm going to give my commentary along with interesting facts. All right, so let's get into the midst of everything. So before I get into all of the facts, I'm going to start with my thoughts, and then as I proceed to all of the facts, I'm going to get my thoughts too within the facts. So I want to say this too. So it's interesting how you remember and you hear things on a and then when you discover and go through research, you find other aspects, so you can't find it at all. So my point, what I'm saying by this is, so I had mentioned earlier in a podcast, in one of my episodes, that the Munsters was, from my recollection, the writer giving his take on the civil rights movement. And then I come to find out I couldn't find any information about that. So that's alleged. I don't know about that. But that's quite interesting if that was the concept about that, the civil rights movement. That would have been quite, that would be quite interesting. So I just want all of y'all to know this, that I couldn't find that information. I did see something with Screen Rant, but it seemed as if just because one thing doesn't mean, you got to see other sources to verify that it's true. So it seemed like it was just taking on, if you will, an interpretation about what Herman Munster said in one of the episodes, and that is in recollection to the civil rights movement. But I actually was watching a show a while back, and about the behind the scenes about these sitcom shows, or about the golden age of television, something like that. And then we were talking about the writers and mentioning that take. But needless to say, so going in, that would have been very, what is notable about as sort of race relations, people making aspects about that through the 60s era and so forth. It was very sophisticated, and then it was even, when it was presented as, for instance, from a childlike point of view, let's go back to Leave It to Beaver, because the same creator, the writer, not creator, but writer that was on the Leave It to Beaver show, he wrote for the Munsters too. So, allegedly. So, okay. So, and there was one episode, particularly remember, where Leave It to Beaver, where Beaver is with his brother, and he notices that there's a black lady, and he with his wonderment, he's never seen a woman like her before. He just and which is understandable, because he is growing up and raised around people who look like him, all the same, pretty much, but and so it's out of curiosity that he notices her. It's nothing that's which is unfortunate. Y'all bet, and I'm glad nothing happened about that. But, looking at with this woke agenda eyes, people say, oh, how cruel can that be? But it's not. It's one of those things. You look at things for what they are, because children are naturally curious, and they're unapologetic. Excuse me. They're unapologetic in a good way, to where they're not braced by fear. They'll just go up and talk to somebody, or notice something that's different and point it out. And that's nice, to that regulation of seeing it from that point of view. And then, there's other cases too, where it's more adult versions about the aspects of race relations. With the movie, the first, not the retake, but the first production, or the original, Who's Coming to Dinner, and getting with a family, or the familiar term of meeting your parents, but introducing one of those things of having it where on the surface you like everyone can relate to, being nervous about bringing someone home to meet your parents, but on the extra level, he happens to be black. And so, and then, being very sophisticated about that, presenting those things. All right, so let's go to the Munsters. So the Munsters, for me, growing up, is one of those things, sort of like comfort food, So what I relate to that with the feelings that you get from comfort food, when it's just uplifting in a lot of ways. That's that doesn't match spirituality. I'm not saying that in that terms, but it's uplifting because it's comedy relief. Laughter can cure what ails you, sort of aspects about that. And so growing up seeing shows like The Munsters, it was interesting how they did things like that. And then there's a aspect or a theory that the Addams Family was in the same realm as the Munsters. I digress about that. But needless to say, I attempt to doing something different, to where it's not in a way that's over explaining, or in a way that's diluted. It's just presented in a clever way, to where you start to see and relate to these characters, even though they're of the undead. And you look past it and you get to the heart of the matter about the aspect of the commentary that they're making about the human nature. And then also it's quite interesting, it relates to that one Twilight episode that's well known, to where, this beautiful woman is running through a hospital, and you don't know quite why she's running away. And then it turns to everybody is in pig face, and they think that she's all unattractive, but she's actually in reality is attractive, and then they're the ones that are ugly. And it also points, my point being is, it points to the reality of the situation, that how you feel or how you look towards the world, not necessarily beauty, but that is a concept of it. It's a representation of how your self-confidence brings you towards what you want to do and how you want to move yourself, your character in life. And that's quite interesting too. Those kind of elements popped up to me, and I noticed those things as I got older, particularly in high school and stuff like that. So with that being said, I'm going to get into the facts about the Munsters. All right, so these sources will be provided for you in this episode. So I'm just going to read from the bottom to the top with this particular source. So it says Al Lewis was the grandpa in the series. So Al Lewis ran for governor of New York in 1998. As the Green Party candidate, he got 52,000 votes. And this goes to the aspect, okay, so case in point, let's go back to Trump. So it's refreshing. So when people of this status run for politics instead of a person that's a professional politician that's been in that's their career, it proves the surface of the point. Well, not surface, the matter of the point is being said. That's what when you are called to action, when you see the purpose of wanting to serve your people, serve the public, it shouldn't matter where you come from. It shouldn't matter that you were a career politician. It should matter about what is your merit. And this goes along with the aspect of him as being an actor running for, political governor to run the state. And that's interesting. And so, with that being said, with Trump, him wanting to run again to be the president, and then him winning presidency, it's really refreshing because it goes to say that people with a different point of view can solve issues that is not, noticeable to other points of views or other people that's been doing this their adult life. And then that helps to also reiterate that it's important to not be, and which is unfortunate, to be stagnant in your political viewpoints, to always have that aspect of welcoming other people to really make changes. And so that's also what begs the question too, when mudslinging and not giving people a chance and saying, they only have this one agenda because it doesn't go with your viewpoint. You actually care about the public that you're serving. So, all right. And in the late 1980s, Al Lewis capitalized on his identity as Grandpa Munster by opening a restaurant in Greenwich Village. It was called Grandpa Bella's Gent, I think that's the pronunciation of that. Fred Gwynn drew the logo for the restaurant, which was a profile of Lewis and his Grandpa Munster costume. There was TV movies in 1995 and 1996 titled Here Comes the Munsters and The Munsters Scary Little Christmas, respectively. The series was rebooted in 1988 as The Munsters Today. And I remember seeing that in the early 90s, a little kid seeing that. And particularly on Fox 20, UPN at the time, in the early stages of UPN. And I thought it was really catchy and neat to see the monsters in color and not understanding, when I knew that something was different, that this was a different interpretation, but I wasn't quite sure. I was 3 at the time when I saw this in the early 90s. And so I said, this looks quite different, and that's nice interpretation of seeing how that relates to other generations. And, looking back and seeing it, And then in my research, it's nice to know that I hope it's still on Hulu. I'll find out that, I can see with adult eyes about, what was the interpretation for this particular era of the Munsters. It lasted 3 seasons with 72 episodes. The entire run is available, as stated, and this source on Hulu. In 1981, there was a TV reunion called The Munsters Revenge. Gwen, DiCarlo, and Lewis reprised their original roles. In 1973, ABC created an animated plot featuring called The Mini Munsters. Okay, hold on, baby. Al Lewis voiced his old character in it. The series was canceled after 2 seasons, but not before the cast shot a made-for-TV movie called Munsters Go Home. Andy Herman inherits a fortune and a mansion from his uncle, a British earl. And I actually saw this movie when I was a kid. It's quite campy, but it's funny at the same time. And so, it also goes with a lot of big name television shows were doing this at the time, like the Beverly Hillbillies and stuff like that. So, the family journeys to the UK and accidentally uncovers a counterfeiting operation. The Munsters inspired a vast variety of merchandise, including several card and board games. Despite the similarities, the Simulations with Munsters by CBS and the Addams similarities with the Addams Family by ABC were created separately without inspiration by each other. And that's a fan theory that says that stating a public opinion that they're in the same universe. So Charles and Sandra McKee of Waxahachie, Texas, are huge fans of the Munsters. When it was time to build their dream home, they recreated the Munsters house. It's quite interesting. And it's a 5,825 square foot mansion that mimics the Munsters home right down to the crooked weather vane and the grand staircase that opens up. Every Halloween, they use it to host huge parties to benefit charities. The Munsters Spooky House has appeared in many TV shows and movies and is still standing today in the Universal Studios lot. It was used just a few years ago in an episode of Desperate Housewives. Oprah Winfrey played a potential buyer of it. She was interested in the house, but decisions against staying there because she found the neighborhood spooky. That's ironic because in actuality, Oprah's the one that's spooky, but that's a whole nother episode to get into. All right, so fans love the Munsters, and so much so the producers ordered another car from Barris for Grandpa, the Munsters coach. So he named it Dragula, and it had a 289 cubic inch Ford Mustang engine and the body of a casket. Barris had numerous difficulty getting that casket. This is Stephen Cox is quoted by saying about what they went through. So I went to several funeral parlors because I wanted to buy a real casket for this car. But they wouldn't sell one unless you were dead, of course. Bear says, laughing. Finally, one place had a broken one. What, baby?
I like on car.
Okay, baby. You play car? Okay. In the corner, but the owner wouldn't sell it. I had a fellow put some money in an envelope and leave it while the owner and I took a walk out back. My guys picked up the casket and walked out. We literally spooked off the casket. The Munsters became so popular that Fred Gwynn and Al Lewis were invited to participate in the 1964 Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. They rode down the street in the Munster coach. That's quite interesting. So, the Munsters had a Munsters hot rod car was made by the famous custom maker George Barris. He also made the Batmobile from the 1966 Batman series. Barris' team made the Munsters coach, as he called it, the Model T bodies and stretched a 1927 touring car. Barris retained ownership of the car and rented it to the production studio when it wasn't in use. He took it to car shows all over the country. Yeah, it's fascinating when the aspects of how that goes with the dedication and time that's taken into making sure that the particular vehicles for particular series represent what is a symbol for what this show is about. Special effects technician Kenneth Strickfaden designed Grandpa Munster's laboratory and Dr. Frankenstein's laboratory in the 1931 film Frankenstein. So Grandpa's lab includes some of the same props from Dr. Frankenstein's lab. Two actresses played Marilyn Munster, Beverly Owen, and asked to leave the show. She asked to leave the show after 13 episodes. Pat Priest replaced her. And there's also a fan theory that says that the reason why Marilyn looks so different from all the other ones is that she's a succubant, and that's something interesting. And that's why she doesn't relate to them, or they don't. She's known as the outcast, not only because of the way she looks, but that she is not of the same breed. So Gwen's Herman Munster's costume was very hot, and it was essentially to keep him cool, not only for his health, but to keep his makeup from melting. Between shots, a stagehand would shoot air with an air compressor to his sleeves to relieve some of the heat. The Munsters owned a cuckoo clock that contains a raven. It shouts "Nevermore," which is a reference to the famous Edgar Allan Poe poem. The voice of that raven was the legendary actor Mel Blanc. Al Lewis' long prosthetic nose was eliminated after a few episodes because he kept getting it in his coffee cups. That's funny. Imagine that. You're sitting down trying to enjoy a cup of coffee, and it turns out your nose for your character is falling. The prosthetic nose is falling off. I bet that gave people a lot of laughs on set. Gwen became an accomplished artist and eventually wrote and illustrated several children's books. And Fred Gwynne, who played Frankenstein, the father, I remember hearing things about that. That's really sweet. So Grandpa was Lily's father, but Al Lewis was a year younger than Yvonne DiCarlo. While Fred Gwynne attended Harvard, he drew cartoons for and was president of the famous Harvard Lampoon. That's quite interesting. So John Carradine, a horror and Western actor, was offered the role of Herman Munster. Billy Mumy was a child actor. He was in a lot of stuff in the 60s, a lot of sitcoms, but particularly what he's noted for is the one Twilight Zone episode where he wishes everybody into the cornfields and things like that. So Bert Lahr, who played the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz, was originally offered the role of Grandpa Munster. Although the first pilot episode was shot in color, the rest of the series was shot in black and white to save money. So the original, and I'm going to end on this and go to the other source that I have about facts. So the original unaired 1964 plot episode was shot in color. Joanne Marshall played the mother. Joanne Marshall played the mother, then named Phoebe. David Duman played Eddie Munster. And there's some more information. I'm going to read this too. So, let me go to that for you. Okay. Let me find it for you. I'll be right back. Okay, this source is by the Monster Complex, and it's entitled 13 Secrets Every Fan Should Know. So, the Monsters nearly started in 1943 as a cartoon by Bob Clampett. According to legend, the origin of the Monsters goes back to the 40s, when famed animator Bob Clampett of the Looney Tunes conceptualized a TV show entitled The Monsters Family. Universal Studios never got to Clampett. Back to Clampett. In the 1940s, Universal Studios was still riding the wave of monster flicks, including such titles as The Invisible Man Returns, The Mummy's Hand, and The Invisible Woman. In the 1941s, The Wolf Man, 1942's The Ghost of Frankenstein, Invisible Agent, and The Mummy's Tomb, and 1943's Frankenstein Meets the Wolf Man, and The Phantom of the Opera and Son of Dracula. During this period, legendary Looney Tune animator Bob Clampett pitched Universal with the idea of a family of funny monsters. Unfortunately, the project was never picked up. And going back to all these old B movie types, I think it set the precedent of how you can, tell a story, a impactful story or a thrilling story or a scary story without the leaning heavily on jump scares or on the fright factor, as far as with violence and things like that. That I think it played with that can be done to make it, softer as far as the aspect of things that go bump in the night or, scary things. So as a part of Warner Brothers Animation, Clampett designed the likes of Porky Pig, Daffy Duck, and Tweety. Clampett left Warner Brothers Cartoon in 1945 and turned his attention to television, creating puppet show Time for Benny and the animated show Beanie and Cecil, the first character-driven television series. So the Monsters' original pitch was stolen. After a decade dominated by the wholesome family fare, network sitcoms started to try some more offbeat ideas, including several supernatural concepts like Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, and My Favorite Martian. TV was filled with witches, genies, aliens, talking horses, and possessed automobiles. The creator of the Monsters, Alan Burns, and Chris Hayward had previously worked together as writers for cartoons including The Rocky and Bullwinkle Show. When the duo pitched the idea of a family of widows more akin to those in Charles Addams cartoons, their contract at Universal passed on the ideas without crediting them. If it weren't for the Writers Guild of America stepping in, they would have been cut out entirely. In the series credits, their contribution is listed as a format as this. Alan Burns went on to co-host or co-create the Mary Tyler Moore Show and Rhoda. And they also have a clip, if you're interested, about Alan Burns being interviewed about this. CBS changed the Monsters to feature the Universal Monsters. As the show was developed, one of the studio's mandates was to change the characters to include that Universal already owned. The studio had been running their old classic horror films on television since the 50s and found that there was still an impressive audience for these decade-old monster movies. So by the time the 60s came in, sitcoms that features nuclear families, was with the Frankenstein monsters, and the father and the Dracula and the family and father-in-law went with the bandwagon about that. From the studio's perspective, leaning in on the Universal Monsters brand made it easy to deal with the rights issues. They could recycle props and costumes and made it easy to create merchandise. The proposal was handed to writers of Norm Lieberman and Ed Hayes, who wrote a pilot script for Love Thy Monster. Between them, Lieberman and Hayes have an assortment of TV writing credits that include Dick Van Dyke Show, Get Smart, Jerry Lewis, Hazel, Good Times, Maude, Chico and the Man, and Different Strokes. So here's this thing where it says Monsters and the Addams Family were developed on weirdly parallel tracks. Pop culture fans are always debating about these things, about the aspect of Xbox versus PlayStation, Aretha Franklin versus Patti LaBelle, Star Trek or Star Wars, Marvel or DC, Narnia or the middle of the earth. And then it also says Katy Perry or Taylor Swift. So a debate has always surrounded the Monsters and Addams Family. The two series debuted with a week of each other, and first episodes of the Monsters Masquerade, aired on September 24th of 1964, whereas the first episode of The Addams Family Goes to School, aired 1 week earlier on September 18th of 1964. All right. So the pilot was somewhat different. As the show was in development, some executives wanted the series to be animated, while others argued for live action. In the end, the live action representation was filmed by MCA Television. The pilot of My Fair Monster is familiar to fans of the show, trying to help its grandniece, that is, find love. Grandpa slips a love potion to Marilyn's oatmeal, but it's accidentally eaten by Herman. There are some distinctions between the pilot version and the final version that aired. For one, the pilot was filmed in color. Also, Joan Marshall appeared as Phoebe instead of Lily, and Happy Derman appeared as Eddie. Executives deemed Marshall too similar to Martika Adams and thought Derman portrayed was too feral. As much, they asked Yvonne DiCarlo to step into the role of Lily and Butch Patrick to be cast as Eddie. There were, and I already went that, and about the aspect of Marilyn. And see. So it says Lily Munster was stronger than Herman. Although Herman Munster, that ringer for the Franken Monster, demonstrated in several episodes that he had superhuman strength, there was more than one episode where his wife Lily was shown to be even stronger than Herman. Now, I think this is one of those goofy, gitchy things trying to say uplift, the power of the feet, but in reality, the situation, that's not plausible because of natural biology that it is that, a man is stronger than a woman. That's what it is. That's how nature is, and that's the beauty of nature, and that's something you don't go against. But I think I don't know, I think this person is making a joke or highlighting, obvious what they noticed, but I think what they were trying to do with that by making it seem as if she's stronger than her husband, of that supernatural ability of the strength of the strength of the that she's of the undead, and so her role or her power as a mother is even stronger. That's my point of view. So, stars Fred Gwynn and Al Lewis had already worked together, and they worked together on the show Car 54 with Are You? And, I'm not reading now, I'm talking from what I've seen of the show. So it centers around, it's a comedic telling of the ins and outs of the lives of cops. And, let's see. I want to end on saying this. The Batman series, overshined the Munsters. Although the Munsters was a hit in the ratings when it kicked off on CBS in the fall of '64, it was canceled after only 2 seasons. And Eddie Munsters actor Butch Patrick points the finger at Batman for cutting the Munsters short. This is what is quoted. It says, Batman just came along and took our ratings away. He told this to Fox News. So the Munsters ended in the first season, ranking 18 in the ratings. However, ABC's Batman debuted in '66 and it just exploded. The Munsters ended in '66 and Batman aired until '68. All right, so with this being said, this reaches, and then I want to give my aspect too about the Rob Zombie movie of the Munsters. I think it was a nice interpretation because it's stated, and I found, people writing about it, that he had such a great love for the Munsters growing up. And so you can really get that gentle touch with how he is portraying these characters in the movie, and also that nostalgia of how it's not just having a monstrous movie with their normal state. It's with the whole idea and the essence of what the '60s were about the aspect of popular music at the time, and that the wave of the fanatic fans of pop stars at the time, and with the British invasion, and then going along the lines of how it was just a dream for the youth, young people, to dream about being pop stars and things of that nature. And it was a nice touch. All right, so this reaches the end of the Heart Green Light. Tune in, turn up, and absolutely take care. Bye-bye now.